Testing, 1, 2, testing. Testing, 1, 2, testing. All right, and we're back. We have another court update on the trial Alliance v. City of Los Angeles regarding homelessness and the misuse of funds, which I like to call fraud. We'll keep calling fraud because it's essentially what it is. Today was the final day of testimony, and what happened is they had closing arguments on all sides. So the Alliance, which is the plaintiffs, had their closing arguments. Then the interveners in the case had their closing arguments. And then the defendant, of course, the City of Los Angeles, had their closing arguments. And then there was a chance for the plaintiff to have their reply/rebuttal to the interveners and the city. What happened today? Well, a couple of very interesting things, and so I'll go ahead and start with that first. I was going to go through a little highlight reel, and then I was going to open it up, but the next step is they're having a hearing later on in June after briefs are submitted by both sides, both the plaintiff side and then a reply brief from the defendant side. One of the things that, as closing arguments were wrapping up and the list of arguments was delivered to the judge for consideration on a decision on the case, was the judge explicitly took notice and gave statements to his concern regarding the notice of double dipping the counts of the bedding for each of the different programs, and the lack of data validation as to what constitutes as a created bed, what constitutes as a counted bed, and how do they segregate the counting of beds for one program to the next. Really interesting enough, what I call the Xenu lawyer did not in fact give his closing argument. It was another lady, and the Xenu lawyer was just hanging out by the wayside and passing on little sticky notes. But their closing statement was just absolutely hilarious on the side of the city. They made no evidence-based statements. It was complete conjecture. It was literally something like out of a Shakespearean play where, yet again, it was this whole soliloquy on the spirit of the law, and there once was a time where a country was so great where we didn't question our city government and question how our city government ran its operations and distributed its money, and how dare the plaintiffs ever question and ever call into doubt how the city manages its funds and how they go about executing its alleged policies and the will of the people that they continue to say is the will of the people, when in reality it's the will of their private special interests taking public funds and abusing the crap out of it. And the best part was when the plaintiffs, the Alliance, was making their closing argument. They had the advantage of going first, and they did what you're supposed to do at a closing argument, which is to anticipate the argument of the defendants. And quite literally, every single point that the plaintiffs brought up that were going to be used as an argument by the city were in fact brought up, and they were some of the worst arguments I've ever seen in my entire life. It all had to do with, well, look at this deputy's title. It's a cool sounding job title, so they must know what they're doing. That's why they're credible, and therefore you should just take everything they say and do as fact. You never question it, and you just move on with that. Here's the actual arguments that the plaintiffs made, which were very legitimate. So the first argument they made that is a legitimate cause of action as a breach of the contract was number one, there was no bed plan ever created by the city, and the milestones and deadlines for each council district were never met and were never specified, and it was mandated and required for the city to, in fact, provide publicly a bed plan, which never happened, which is a plan, of course, on the timeline for creation of the beds, what constitutes the definition of a bed, how do you measure the counting of a bed, how the cost is going to be divvied up between how many beds each unit should contain, the form in which those beds will exist, whether it's a alleged overnight parking lot that you can sleep in, and whether they're going to provide cars for people to sleep in, or if it's going to be trailers, or if it's going to be a hotel room, what have you. That was the first. The second is that the alliance missed the settlement agreement missed the bed milestones, meaning when they would deliver them and the quantity of beds that would be delivered. The third breach, they stated, was the reported unverified reductions of alleged homelessness and alleged encampments was not validated. The numbers didn't make any sense. There was no logs as to who did, say, a RV removal versus our RV destruction, and what numbers that counted towards, when they were done, who constituted the determination as to being able to go and execute that task of removing and or destruction, what happened to the property after it was seized, who owns it. And so those were the four breaches that were highlighted by the plaintiff. And the best part of their closing argument was the particular clause they added to say there was never any sort of best effort modifier in the actual agreement itself, as well as tangible evidence that was shown by the city, meaning the city never actually did any sort of due diligence and good faith operation to actually execute the agreements they had made. And even when they didn't make those agreements, there was no good faith effort for the city to come back and say, we apologize, here's our revised schedules, and here's what changes we believe should be made. They just decided to go along with whatever they wanted to, and everybody else be damned. The best part, in addition to that, was also the fact that all new beds, whatever that means as far as Inside Safe considers them new beds, all new beds under Inside Safe have zero data validation. That was testified by Szabo. That 100% implicates Karen Bass, as she was the legislator of the program, and all the deputies she hired to execute the implementation and enforcement of the program. We were also told by the CIO of LASA, and this is a comment that was taken as part of testimony about a year ago that the plaintiffs made, quote, and this is a deputy for the mayor's office saying this, where they were saying, quote, we were told by the chief information officer of LASA that we need to do whatever we need to do in order to make the mayor look good, period. The implication being, no matter if the programs are crap, no matter if the outcomes are crap, no matter if the money is going in the wrong hands, and regardless if we know that the money is going in the wrong hands and the program is being abused, it doesn't matter as long as the mayor looks good. The end goal is homeless people be damned, the taxpayer and the will of the people be damned. What does the mayor want? It's the mayor's well-being and catering to the mayor's every whim that matters the most. And that was seen by much of the other testimony from Szabo and from the other chief deputy that I mentioned before, who was deliberately hired as the overseer of all homelessness initiative programs. And the most damning part that was brought up in the closing argument from the plaintiffs is where they showed all of the other comparisons of other people doing the creation of beds and homeless shelters and the speed and cost at which they were able to do it compared to the city. The best one far was Brian Ulf that testified to being able to make 1,000 beds in under 12 months and being able to provide an entire full year cost to house those people for barely a couple $1 million, and it's all inclusive: the utilities, the rent, the social services that are all in-house rather than having to rely on people take transportation elsewhere to get to AA groups, to get to a counselor and so on. All of that being in-house, and each of the rooms themselves being a private room that a person could have with all those amenities privately to themselves rather than being shared by 5, 6 other people. And it's just very telling, right? This is very telling that the civil aspect of this is just simply leading up to criminal prosecution after all these city officials, particularly the mayor. And I keep honing on the fact that the people who are privy to all this information and will forever continue to be privy and have zero, right? They have zero excuse for not negotiating the contracts properly is the city attorney's office. The city attorney's office is in fact the legal counsel for the city. Every negotiation, every dealing, the city attorney's office is there. They know everything that goes on at every single point in time, and they're choosing to allow all this criminal behavior to be getting away with, and they're choosing to not prosecute any of these corrupt city officials. And so the biggest blood, in my opinion, is on their hands, because as we know from the Michelle McGuinness case,
how many people a day are dying that got brought up?
yes, the closing part, the final sentence that the plaintiffs stated to wrap up their closing argument was, while we've been here for this entire hearing, just in the last week alone, there's been 60 people dead because of all the crap that about at least 7 per day, because all the crap that Mayor Karen Bass and the city attorney's office are pulling on the people. They are killing people. That's a fact. And that's just 1 week. 1 week, you kill minimum 60 people, and that blood is on Heidi Feldstein Soto's hand, Mayor Karen Bass's hands, and all the deputies, but particularly those two, the heads of those two offices, where Bass is setting the policy and Heidi is negotiating all the contracts, and knowing damn well that the contracts are crap, knowing damn well who all the money is going towards, and not saying a damn thing about it. Just because you have attorney-client privilege, it doesn't mean that you keep your mouth shut as your client is continuing to do more criminal shit. That's not how attorney-client privilege works. And yeah, of course, that's the kind of shit that Heidi Feldstein Soto is doing.
You have to repeal illegal actions, including judges are obliged to tell on other judges if they find committing crime.
Right. By the rules, by the letter of the law, you are required to report the criminal activities regardless of whether they're your client or not. None of that matters. Just because you're your client doesn't mean anything. Just because you're the city attorney and your client happens to be the city and the city officials are doing corrupt activities means absolutely nothing. You are legally required to report on it, and particularly for Heidi, based on how the charter is in Los Angeles and the agreement made between the district attorney's office and the city attorney's office, the city attorney is the one that has a public integrity unit that specifically is assigned to prosecute criminally corrupt city officials. And they haven't done that. And they continue to not do that. And they continue to blatantly collude with all these different criminal entities. And so that's the real story. So I keep saying over and over again that the LASD and the LAPD are not the biggest gangs. They do have gangs, but it's not the biggest gang. Because at the end of the day, how do you hold an officer or any other criminal accountable? You criminally prosecute them. Who is the only body capable of criminally prosecuting somebody? It is the government. in this particular case, for corrupt officials, corrupt government officials, it's the city attorney's office. The city attorney's office has that authority, and they're deliberately choosing and have deliberately chosen for years, right? For years. This case is just a culmination of that. But for years, the city attorney's office has chosen to turn a blind eye, and that's why they have the blood on their hands predominantly. And so, again, just because the city is your client doesn't mean anything. You are legally required, just as judges are, when you're seeing another judge do criminal shit and you're seeing your client do criminal shit. Doesn't matter that they're your client.
Professional legal obligation.
You have a professional legal obligation to disclose that. Period, point blank. It really is just that simple. And this is another funny bit. The guy that had the pickle juice was now wearing a pickle juice necklace, and it was hilarious. So the return of the pickle juice came back for a second time this week, and it was just one of those things where you had to be there.
How smart these homeless people are and how well they read everything and see everything.
So people don't understand something, which is they often say, well, who the heck is watching all these budget meetings? Who the heck is watching all the city council meetings? Well, it's the homeless population. They know exactly what items are going to be heard. They know exactly what each of the deliberations went into for the budgets. They know the basis. They know everything. And the folks that were present here for the last 2+ weeks were on top of the game, honestly, way more so than the city ever was. The city, it was so clear that they just need to go back to grade school. Every single day. They were here every single day without fail for the entire duration, and they knew bits of information that even the city didn't know and the plaintiffs didn't know.
And talk about when they start reading these books that most people can't comprehend, how fast they get it.
So the budget books that are there for not only the fiscal year but the five-year plans, they're able to pick up these books and immediately off the bat comprehend not just the numbers, but the little caveats that are there when in writing. They read the particular language, and they read between the lines, and they understand that the numbers they show are just simply the magic sleight of hand to distract you from the greater context, which actually incorporates all the detail. The numbers that are shown are nothing but a smoke and mirror show. You need to do some extra massaging to get the context, to get the qualitative aspect, and they're able to fire it off left, right, front, and center. And not only that, they're even able to tie exactly who from the city council aspect, from the county level, actually deliberated upon it, when they deliberated upon it, and they can point you exactly how it is that number over time, that number came to be, and what the equation used to come up to that determination. It's honestly brilliant. And they have so much more genius, especially far more than the city, but even more so than the plaintiff. And it's remarkable. It's truly remarkable. And so that's who watches all these meetings. That's who's paying close attention. And that's how you build legitimate cred. Right? Not just the street cred, but you got to be able to understand the game, and most importantly, the trust factor. The city has no trust with anybody. City officials hate each other. It's a cutthroat game. The staffers, for example, who are about to get their entire salaries cut in less than a month here, are going to be vying for each other's jobs as their council members either go to prison or leave for their term. And it's just a dog-eat-dog world where these people aren't learning the actual criminal gang behavior that is the city council. It's a bunch of criminal racketeering gangsters. It's just a giant gang. So is the city attorney's office is a giant gang. And so and those staffers who are always there present know so little. And the people present in the courtroom sitting in the audience, the homeless population, know far more than all the council members combined, than all their staffers combined, than the plaintiffs on this case combined, and definitely way more than the city combined. And it's just a sight to see, man. And this case has national implications. It's not just for the city of Los Angeles. This is such a big ticket item where the repeated freaking use of public taxpayer dollars to allegedly have some positive social means through missions like alleviating homelessness is the fraud game. And it's not just the nonprofits laundering it, but it's these long, like Zabo made a 55-year long plan and commitment for real estate to garner interest, and the basis of that interest is important. The delta over time, and whether the determination of what the basis is, and whether it's a particular equation that's fixed, if it's on market value, on whatever other factors go into making that determination, that's the big money. Not this $2 billion, which is a drop in the bucket. We're talking about trillions of dollars over a long period of time, and that's where the real criminality is. And it's the cover up of that. That's the real issue. And it's done through many facets, right? You have the special master that was testifying to various auditing reports and various concerns that she's had for years, right? For years. And the complete character assassination that was deployed to try to discredit her over completely irrelevant things that had no.
Tell them what she said about when they asked her, would you like to be a lawyer?
So, and it was culminating at this point where, again, the city was just trashing on the county special master because they had nothing else to do. They had nothing to get her on. And so what did they do? They just kept badgering her with useless, irrelevant questions. And they kept asking her this particular one to say, give us your opinion. And she said, I'm not a lawyer. And the city kept asking, well, give us your opinion anyway. And she said, I'm not a lawyer again. I never want to freaking be a lawyer after all this crap. And screw all lawyers. Especially after all this shit show. She never wants to be a lawyer, and she's so glad. It was beautiful. It was, and the tone of voice, and just the whole thing. Because the lady that was badgering her on the witness stand on the side of the city, she was such an idiot. First of all, her questions were dumb as heck, but she was the same person that kept repeatedly making dumbass objections at every point. And accusations. Her questions were not questions.
On the lady's integrity.
She kept slandering. Yes, this lady on the side of the city kept slandering the special master, kept outright trying to destroy the credibility of the special master, as well as the credibility and the character of the judge. And so
and judges having anything to do with these issues, and special masters,
yes,
in every court implication in the United States.
She wasn't, this attorney for the city wasn't just going after this special master. She was claiming, right, the whole concept of the special master and the whole concept of judges as a sort of buffer and auditory body.
The public knows better.
Right, as an auditory body between what the city level does with the execution of money from its constituents. They were saying, to hell with that entire approach to verifying and auditing how this money is being spent. They think it's bullcrap, and they think that nobody should be able to question, ever, not only the authority, but the execution and operation of city government. They said, how dare you ever question how we, the city, want to conduct our business? And the people know everything that's going on just by the sheer act of electing officials who then appoint all these deputies was essentially their argument. Well, the people elected them, and all the deputies they appointed thereafter are credible just because the people elected and appointed them, and so therefore at that point there's no need ever to question or audit any of this activity. It's just taken as good faith always at all point in time. We know better than you. We're going to do your thinking for you. We know better than the judge. We know better than all the CPA company doing the auditing. We know better than the special master. We know better than the plaintiffs. We know better than the people suffering through the crap. We know better than everybody at every point in time. Never question us. Just take our authority as absolute. And they kept appealing to again, look at the title of this deputy and look at the company they were once with. That should hold water just at face value, which is utter insanity. And it shows not just the mindset of the lawyers, but the mindset and the attitude and the kind of viewpoint that the city and its officials have on people. And it's more than just resentment and disgust, but it's an absolute hatred, actively seeking to do harm, actively seeking to destroy people, actively seeking to separate families, actively seeking to kill people, quite literally kill people, and then gaslighting you to say, we didn't kill those people. They had it coming. We were saving them. We were this gracious white knight coming to save the day. It's literally 1984 all over again. Literally what it is. And that's the attitude that the city has. We will kill anybody and everybody we need to in order to make sure that our pockets and our interests are served. Everybody else be damned. And even worse, they will cannibalize their own to make sure it happens as well. It doesn't matter what our staffers think. It doesn't matter what our deputies go through. All of them be damned too. We'll cannibalize them too if ever they dare question our authority. If ever they even think about getting in our way, we will run them over too. Fuck them too. That's ultimately what was put on the record here. That this is truly how much the Los Angeles city government fucking hates everybody that's not the Los Angeles city government. And even their own people they fucking hate too. To a slightly, maybe less than 0.5% degree, but even then, they hate each of their own almost as much as they hate everybody else. It's truly disgusting, and many times you would see people get up and leave because it was so fucked up. And to not have an outburst, they would leave and come right back afterwards. But that's the real story of what this case is all about. It was never about the $2 billion. It was to get officially on the record how utterly fucking evil and just disgusting and the viewpoint that the city has of people and this perversion that they have in their minds to say that we're the saviors, we're providing solace, we're providing life-saving services and programs. You should be thanking us. Look at how much we break our backs to try to help you, the people. Look how much we care for you, as they're pointing a gun to your head and threatening to kill your family and many times killing them altogether and saying, look how much we love you. It's the most abusive shit you could ever think of, honestly. Like, think about any psychological thriller in the past 2-3 years, and it's the same premise. Same exact premise. And so that's what transpired today. Really great closing arguments. And the last thing I wanted to say too is neither side, neither the city nor the plaintiffs nor the interveners ever made use of the word fraud. That was never used at any point in time. And I find that very interesting because it is quite literally what happened.
And what does it say in there?
What's that?
Rico.
Yeah. So nobody ever said fraud, though. Nobody ever said fraud particularly.
Right on the front paragraph, it says RICO, organized crime, and when multiple agencies are involved federally, that includes Hobbs Act that most people haven't heard about, but Hobbs Act is federal government corruption. So when you combine RICO with Hobbs Act, and then you go to California Bain Act, which is civil rights, and SLAP, where they charge you for stuff to keep you out of the public venue, you start to get an idea of how deep a shit they're in. when the DOJ showed up last Friday, and these stupid fucks didn't even realize it until it was too late.
That's right.
Now that says one message to everybody, and we know why this is happening. They got the goods to go for full prosecution, especially with what they've been handed.
This is the precursor. This is sort of like the trailer.
There's another big thing that I'm only going to just give a couple of minutes because Enray has really covered everything, but there's another big bitch that got open today. These stupid fools have gone this long keeping the Joint Powers Authority out until their stupid lawyer starts bragging about all this garbage, and she opened the door. So I got the book that goes back to 1993 when this starts, and they're saying, well, it's on fire, we have an emergency. Okay, when was the fire? Why, that was the beginning of this year. How many years is it from 2003 till now? Oh, we're going to forget 32 years because there's a fire now? These are the inane arguments these people running. These lawyers are so Mickey Mouse they can't even think their way out of their ass. I mean, I don't know how they graduated.
The funniest part is where they opened that door to the joint powers, and at the same time they were discrediting the special master. And so it's like there's
And the court.
and the court.
And basically the power of any federal court to have anything to do, because those wise-ass crooks know better than anybody else, and the voters know more. Yeah, the voters really know their ass from a hole in the ground, huh?
It's so true.
So if they know so much, and this is so important, other than suits being paid and some reporters there, other than the homeless there that they didn't want, that the judge asked to be there, okay? The judge asked them to come and be there. It was me and Enray. Where are these other people that are so concerned? I don't know, but I was osmosisly there because I came from the planet Xenu.
I gotta show
And
you.
I can mysteriously create reality out of nothing because I'm magic. You know, I don't know what these guys are thinking about, but I'd like to find the drugs they're on, because they are certainly good. I think it's maybe they mixed acid, bad acid, doing too much speed, crack, smoke and dust, and they put it all into a big party package that makes a Frisco speedball look like a party toy.
I mean, you can't tell me this is not Xenu. Like, this is Xenu. This guy is the lead lawyer for the city of Los Angeles.
No, for Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher.
For Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher.
The city of LA.
Right.
Because they realized they were in criminal problems and could not represent themselves, because the city attorney who was representing them is now on the hook and going to be prosecuted. Because every move has to be authorized by the city attorney,
Yeah, here.
or nothing happens. Not a document is written, not a policy is done without the city attorney approving. And if they don't have the expertise, they go to those $6,000 billing per hour guys, as they should, to get proper advice. And in spite of all of that, they go ahead and break the goddamn law. So when you've done that consistently for 32 years, and if you come up against a real prosecutor that can't be bought and sold, why, no wonder at the last minute they hire Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher. And then what do? They start talking about their thing up in Grants Pass. Well, anything about Grants Pass know that is one of the most right-wing trash pits on the planet. So naturally, those people don't care about nothing. And here's the real problem. Trump is a pile of trash, okay? This is why the Democrats are in trouble. He's a pile of trash, but he didn't lie about who he is. Until these Democrats start taking down their own people as criminals, what right do they have to talk about anybody else? In fact, to tell you the truth, they're worse than Trump because they didn't tell the truth. And until they stop this, these Democrats can talk all this other trash they want. Because you can't, until you have the people's trust, and people hate a liar, and that's why they voted for Trump. Now, I'm posting this online to these guys. They're the bigwig Dems. And I don't know what the problem is. Now, when I bang Rachel Maddow about you can't just work Mondays, I said, at a time like this, who the hell do you think you are making all your money? Now you want to go party with your little friend in your cabin and leave us all in the dirt. Notice she's doing 5 days a week? And I check back maybe 50 comments. Ain't nobody talking this shit but me. So don't tell me you can't do nothing. So get involved, people. And if you want to think about a subject before you open your mouth, know what you're talking about. Do some research.
I don't land on that, and definitely don't be Xenu.
Don't be Xenu from the planet Mortina.
Don't be
From the
Xenu.
universe of Wazualina.
Xenu.
In one of the bubbles of the universe.
Yeah, I'll end it at
For
there.
billions of years of time, we wandered through space and time.
Look at Xenu.
Are we done?